ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतः पदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगना रघुनाथां वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकाकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण। So we are on the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled as Dhyana Yoga. This particular chapter is a very interesting chapter because here in this whole chapter Krishna speaks about the whole concept of Ashtanga Yoga, and this one chapter is a little out of the regular box of the Bhagavad Gita, and in fact this chapter is actually supposed to be a very discouraging chapter basically. So in essence, if you study the nature of yoga, the concept of Ashtanga Yoga, in Kali Yuga, according to the psychophysical nature of people who are present in this age, it is not possible to do Ashtanga Yoga actually. What we do, the International Yoga Day and all that, it's just exercises in one sense, It's not really Ashtanga Yoga as such, because of course in this chapter we will be discussing what really Ashtanga Yoga is, and then you will realize at the end of the whole chapter that we are very far away from what really Ashtanga Yoga is. So why is Krishna speaking this chapter? Krishna is speaking this chapter for us to come to the conclusion that yoga, the whole concept of yoga is far from easy, and essentially the purpose of this chapter is to give us a complex. The purpose of this chapter is to make us humble, give us the humility that we are good for nothing, essentially, that is the purpose of the 6th chapter of the Gita. So essentially 46, there are totally 47 verses in this chapter. 46 verses of the 47 verses explains how this chapter is not easy for you and me, and the 47th verse explains what is easy for us. So essentially the 47th verse is like a hope giving verse that Krishna has added in the end of this chapter. Generally something that is easy is not the best, and something that is best is not always easy. So in this world you will always find this complication. What is easy is not the best, and what is the best is not easy at all. So most people don't know what to do in life, and therefore the verse number 47, which we will discuss in the end, it gives us a combination of best and easy, and that is what the purpose of this chapter is essentially. So the purpose of this chapter is to discuss verse number 47. But the first 46 verses that we'll be discussing is to scare us, to create some kind of, complex in us, things like that. Kali Yuga, this particular age, is an age of temptation. It's an age of distraction. And in this age, especially in a city like Bombay, and the two in this part of Bombay, which it's almost impossible to do anything stable. Yeah. No problem. Kali Yuga is the age of distraction, temptation. कुछ ना कुछ होता रहता है. So, why is yoga difficult in Kali Yuga? The Srimad Bhagavatam defines reasons why yoga is very difficult in Kali Yuga. In fact, the Srimad Bhagavatam explains there are 5 reasons why people in Kali Yuga cannot practice yoga. So, on the week of the International Yoga Day, this is a very good topic to discuss. Why you cannot do yoga in Kali Yuga. This is like a de-promotion of yoga. And then we will talk about what is real yoga later on, somewhere in this chapter. So the first disqualification of human beings to practice yoga in this age is that we are all alpa ayusha. Alpa ayusha means lifespan is very short. So in Satya Yuga, people would live for 100,000 years, 1 lakh years. In Treta Yuga, people would live for 10,000 years. Dwapar Yuga, people would live for 1,000 years. And in Kali Yuga, people live for 100 years, and that too it's reducing with time. Why in this age the lifespan is shorter, much lesser? The reason is because people in this age practice no regulation. There is no regulation at all. Regulation of when to eat, how much to eat, what to eat, how much to sleep, when to sleep. Absolutely no regulation at all. One reporter, he saw 3 very old men sitting on one bench, in a park bench. And he was very surprised seeing old men in this age, really old men. So he went and asked the first fellow that, what is the secret of your long life? So long, you seem to be quite old. So this man said, in my life I never smoked, I never drank, and I was very faithful to my wife. I followed a very regulated lifestyle. And the reporter said, what is your age? He said 96. So then the reporter saw the next fellow. He said, what about you? He said, I smoked once in my life and couple of times I drank. That's all. He said, what's your age? He said 93. Then the reporter saw the next fellow, third fellow, he said. So this fellow, he said, all my life I drank and all my life I smoked. The reporter was impressed. In spite of that, you are so old. He said, what's your age? He said 23. So the fellow was 23, but he looked like 96-year-old fellow, basically. So Kali Yuga, already lifespan is short. But due to irregulation, that is also decreasing even further. You find very commonly 20-year-old people detected with lung cancer, or you find like the kind of diseases that have been almost absent in the past, present in such rapid ways. So the first disqualification of people in the age of Kali to practice yoga is that alpa ayusha. That means there is very short lifespan. So that means essentially people in Kali Yuga, to practice the concept of yoga properly, you need a lot of time. Like Hiranyakashipu, he went to meditate for 1,000 years. Now if you only have 1,000 years, you meditate all 1,000 years, what will you do? So he had 10,000 years of life. So 1,000 years he could dedicate, for meditation. If you only have 100 years, how much can you give for meditation? So first of all, lifespan is a problem. And the second thing is, even if you have a certain amount of life, whatever amount of life you have, the second problem is people in Kali Yuga are manda. That means lazy. Lazy specifically to practice spirituality. It's not that they're lazy for everything else, Specifically lazy to practice spiritual life, To go to a movie, to go to a restaurant, to go to some cricket match, there is a lot of enthusiasm and there is a lot of action, People are excited. But when it comes to coming to a class, thak gaye. बहुत काम किया ऑफिस में, And when it comes to going to a movie, no excuse at all. And people can inspire others to go to a movie, I know how people can inspire by buying a movie ticket, spending so much money on it. But when it comes to coming to a temple for a class, children's exams are there, wife says I have to do cooking, husband says market went down, so I'm also down, So many reasons, why you don't want to come. So first of all, age is less, alpa ayusha. The second is manda, a person is lazy. Even if a person is not manda, the third reason is there, it is sumanda matayo. That means a person is less intelligent. So somehow or the other, even if you overcome laziness, and in a short lifetime you find time to come to some spiritual programs, still the problem is that even if you go to a spiritual program, even if you go to a satsang, the fellow who conducts a satsang, he is ready to misguide you. So it's not that just because you have a desire to go to a spiritual program means you will get right guidance. It's not always true. So most people in Kali Yuga, even somehow overcoming laziness when they decided to go and understand something spiritual, there are people who are ready to misguide you. And therefore, people will tell you so many things. Some people will tell you worship nothing. Some people will tell you worship everything. Some people will say you worship anything. And some people will tell you worship something. So you are so confused. What should you worship it? People end up worshipping a car. People end up worshipping scooters. It's just crazy. The kind of people in Kali Yuga. Totally misguided. There was one brahmachari before he came to the ISKCON temple. He had a very interesting standard of worship. You know what he would worship? He would worship his own chappal. He mounted his own chappal on the wall and he was doing arati for his own chappal. So somebody asked him, what is this? Apna chappal ko? He said, I thought I am God and therefore I should worship my own paduka, तो अपना खुद का चप्पल का worship कर रहा हूँ. So these people, their mindset is God plus desire is equal to human being, and God and human being minus desire is equal to God. So this fellow's philosophy was, I have no desire, therefore I am God. Therefore I should worship my own slipper. So that was his philosophy, So essentially, first of all, alpa ayusha. People are having less age, less time. Then even if they have age in hand, then there is laziness, manda. And then even if they have overcome the laziness and decide to come for something, then there is sumanda matayo. They are less intelligent, and those who are teaching them, they are cheating them. And then the fourth problem, somehow or the other, even if you come to the right place, you take out time, you overcome your laziness, and somehow or the other come to the right place also, then there is manda bhagya. Manda bhagya means very unfortunate. People in this age are very unfortunate. How can you focus when so many problems are going on in your life? So I know people who come to class just for 1 hour of feeling peace. शांति मिलता है इधर. थोड़ा मजा हंसी मजाक हो जाता है, थोड़ा सा सीख लेते हैं, थोड़ा सा कीर्तन में भाग ले लेते हैं. So it's nice. AC एटमॉस्फेयर भी है और अंत में मिलता है अच्छा सा खाने को, गरम गरम मिलता है. और क्या चाहिए जीवन में? 1 घंटा निकल जाता है ऐसे ही. So people are less fortunate. Manda bhagya. There was a science conclave where about 7 Nobel laureates came together, and one of them, so they were talking about how one can get a Nobel Prize. And one guy, he said, you need combination of 3 things to get a Nobel Prize: hard work, right guidance, and lot of luck. Science and luck don't go together at all, But here is a scientist who is saying, to get a Nobel Prize, one of the factors that is needed is bhagya, luck. Essentially, the whole concept is, in Kali Yuga, people are so unfortunate that even when they set towards spirituality, their misfortune comes and catches them and doesn't allow them to practice spirituality. And somehow or the other manage to want to practice spirituality. Then there is a fourth thing. This is the fifth thing, which is known as upadritaha. Upadrita means disturbed minds. All of us, by the time you come to the process of Krishna consciousness, most people, all of us, we have lived such abused lives. Most people come to the process of Krishna consciousness beyond 30, 30, 35, 40, 50 also. 40 साल अब्यूज करने के बाद आते हैं मंदिर, अभी हमको सुधारो प्रभु जी। क्या सुधारने के लिए रह गया, पूरा तो सत्यानाश हो गया है कि नहीं शरीर का। So the body has been abused like anything, the mind has been abused like anything, and then we come to rectify ourselves, to purify ourselves, to progress in our spiritual lives. And therefore, when we come to practice spiritual lives with a baggage of conditionings, big baggage of conditionings, we know what is right, but unfortunately we have such bad habits. And therefore, even if you want to do the right thing, conditioning just doesn't allow us. Just before I came for the class, I met somebody who was telling me that struggling a lot. I could make out from his face only, And the only thing he was telling me constantly is that, Prabhuji, bahut mushkil hai. And I could make out from his face, struggling very badly, against bad habits. So naturally, when you have abused your body so much, abused your mind so much, and then suddenly you start trying to live a pure life, there is a lot of backlash. One time I was traveling in a train and I saw one young boy wearing a t-shirt, and I was very impressed when I saw that t-shirt, and the t-shirt read "Save Water." So I was very impressed. The young boy is like promoting this and all. He turned back, पीछे लिखा था "Drink beer." मैं बोला यार perfect कलयुग का प्रोडक्ट है. So essentially, after you live a completely abused life, after you have completely squeezed every type of pleasure through your body, then you come to Hare Krishna moment. This is called as 100 चूहे खाने के बाद बिल्ली हज को चली. That's our situation most of the time, Sarah. Unfortunate and totally disturbed. So the mind, for us to be able to focus, it's impossible. And what to speak of practicing yoga? Impossible with such a background and such a lifestyle. So somehow, if we try to deal with our mind, still there is so much upadrita, disturbances. In Kali Yuga, every second person is going through depression. Nowadays it is fashionable to say I am depressed. लोगों को मजा आता है बोलने के लिए, प्रभु जी मैं डिप्रेस्ड हूँ, क्या करूँ अभी बताओ. So it's like somehow it's people want that attention, somehow or the other people want that somebody should take care of them, somebody should ask them what is going on in their lives. Depressed case एक मिल गया तो आपका 2 घंटा गया, सुनना पड़ेगा बैठ के, डिप्रेशन है कि नहीं. So look at our situation, and we are trying to practice yoga with such a bad situation, Alpayusha, Manda, ageless, laziness, and then lack of guidance. And even if you get the right guidance, you are so unfortunate, Manda Bhagya. And even if you get, if you're fortunate enough to have everything in life normal, mind is not normal. Upadrita, mind is disturbed. If a fish in water cries, who will come to know? Nobody will come to know only. Fish will keep crying, how much ever it cries, nobody will come to know. Similarly, people in Kali Yuga are so disturbed mentally, so miserable. that even if they express to others, who can help them? Because everybody is in the same state. Everybody is miserable only. So if somebody is crying and somebody says, I am also crying, chalo saath mein baith ke rote hai, so nobody is really there to help us. In fact, in US, the number of human psychiatric patients have increased so much that, influenced by their association, even dogs are getting, depressed. Dogs going into depression. They don't bark only. Can you imagine? कुत्ते भोगते नहीं है, क्यों? डिप्रेशन में चला गया बेचारा. इतना डिप्रेस हो गया कि भोगना ही भूल गया. So now there are dog psychiatrists, and the dog psychiatrists inspire them to bark. Bhogo. Can you imagine what kind of situation we are in? This is Kali Yuga, disturbed, highly disturbed people, There was a plane where 3 politicians were traveling. So one politician, they were passing through a drought-prone area where there's less money, less resources. One politician, he threw 100 rupee note. He said one person will benefit at least. Another politician, he threw 10 rupee notes. He said 10 people will benefit. And the third politician threw 1 rupee notes. 100 people will benefit. The pilot, he threw 3 of them. Whole world will benefit. Fuel prices increasing, tsunamis, so much disturbance in this world. So how can people with such qualities practice yoga? Impossible. And therefore, in this age, yoga is a very difficult process to practice. I'm talking about Ashtanga yoga. So no matter how much you somehow overcome these 5 things, you still are a part of this society. You're still a part of Kali Yuga. And therefore it's going to be very difficult to practice. And therefore, the 6th chapter of the Gita, the acronym for the 6th chapter is easy. What is the easy way out? That is what we are going to discuss in the full 6th chapter, So the first part of the acronym is E, which stands for enemy or a friend. So before Krishna starts speaking the 6th chapter, there is a discussion about the concept of sannyas. So Arjun, his condition was that he was running away from the battlefield. And so essentially, Arjun's mindset was, if nothing is working, chalo ashram join karo. Many people have this doubt, In fact, somebody told me that I always felt people in the ashram are people who couldn't do anything. और कुछ नहीं हुआ, चलो आश्रम आ जाते हैं, ऐसा. So people had that impression. I mean, I'm sure people still have that impression. I'm not sure how many of you all are thinking like that, that कुछ नहीं है, चलो आश्रम join करो. So many people, they want to give up the fight easily. Relationships in 2 seconds breaking. I know one family, they got married, and the very day when the girl came home, she realized there's a problem. The problem is that she realized, these people are from Goa. The moment she entered the house, she realized this person is not really a proper Goan. All their life they've been living in Goa. All life they've been living in Goa, but somehow not the exact perfect caste or the type of person they're looking for. She went back. वापस चलेगी. Over, marriage over. The moment she stepped in, when she realizes that this is not the perfectly same culture that I'm a part of, she just left. Gone, marriage. Not even half a day. Can you imagine, what kind of situation we are in? So most people don't want to take responsibility. They just want to quit, right? So Krishna explains what is sannyas. Krishna explains sannyas essentially means service in reality. Understanding the realities of life. Without being, so if you're an illusion and then you do something in this world, That's actually not really right, not really beneficial. Just like if you buy a juice can or some cold drink can, you'll always find the contents of it written in it. It will be written what are the contents exactly, and it will also tell you what is your what experience you will get after drinking it, and it will also tell you what benefits you will get after drinking it. Similarly, Bhagavad Gita is like a juice can, and it tells you the contents of the juice: birth, disease, old age, death. What is the experience you will get after drinking it? Condensed misery. That is what you will get in this world, And then when you read the Bhagavad Gita, you come to the reality. You come to see the reality of this world. Sannyas essentially means to serve the reality. And Maya or illusion means to serve illusion. To serve that which is not the reality. Who cannot read the contents of a bottle? And there are three people who cannot read. First person who cannot read is if you don't know the language. If it is written in Chinese, if it is in some other language that you can't understand only. So no matter how much ever you keep looking at it, you can't understand anything. So nobody in this world understands the language of the Gita. Juice can is there with us. Bhagavad Gita is there with us. Open it, it looks like English only. We almost feel we can read it. But unfortunately, Bhagavad Gita is written in a different language. The language that the world understands is the language of I, me and mine. The language of the ego. That is a language that we are very comfortable with. But Bhagavad Gita doesn't speak that language. It's written in a different language. And therefore, when we read it with the language that we understand, I, me and mine, कुछ समझ में नहीं आता है क्या लिखा है कृष्ण ने. You can't understand. The second reason when you can't understand or when you can't read the instructions or the contents of the juice can is if there is no light in the shop. Andhera hai. Even if you read it, what will you read? That means the second reason why you cannot understand the Bhagavad Gita is if you are in darkness of ignorance. You are in pure ignorance. Then you can't understand the Gita. No matter how much you try to understand, andar kuch ghusega hi nahi. And the third reason why a person cannot understand the contents of the Gita is that if somebody is reading something and that person is totally drunk, intoxicated, क्या समझ में आएगा? All words will be उल्टा उल्टा, कुछ दिखेगा ही नहीं बराबर से. So similarly, if somebody is intoxicated in illusion and such a person, if he comes and starts reading the Gita, he can't understand anything. And therefore, for us to actually understand the language of the Gita, to understand the contents of the Gita, we need to have some guidance. So the 6th chapter begins with the first 9 verses, talks about the mind. Krishna in this first 9 verses, he's talking about how the mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. So he initially talks about 2 stages of yoga. The first stage is called Yoga Ruruksha stage, which is the beginning stage of yoga. And then there is something known as Yoga Rudha stage, which is the advanced stage of yoga. Just like if there is somebody who smokes a cigarette. So the initial beginner who takes the first puff, he starts coughing. But when one reaches the advanced stage, he can smoke 5 cigarettes at a time. No problem only. Similarly, Krishna is trying to say that person in the beginning stages of spiritual life should not give up all work. What Arjuna is trying to do, he's trying to run away from work. So Krishna says person in the beginning stage of spiritual life should not run away from work, should not run away from responsibility. But when one reaches a higher stage, a much higher stage, such a person can think of giving up. So the first qualification of somebody to become a yogi is somebody who has to give up the ego, the egoistic tendencies. So Krishna introduces what is known as the Ashtanga Yoga. The word Ashtanga means 8 limbs. Anga means limbs and Ashta means 8. So he talks about 8 limbs of yoga. So the first limb of yoga is do's and don'ts, yama and niyama. So yama means do's and niyama means don'ts. Just like in every aspect of life, we have do's and don'ts, rules basically, rules and regulations. So the more accurately we follow the rules and regulations, do's and don'ts, the more we will advance. Many people feel the rules and regulations are the most important thing. Actually, it's not a fact. When we talk about the 4 related principles in ISKCON, people feel, अरे ये तो बहुत advanced stage है. बोले advanced stage नहीं है, ये first stage है, do's and don'ts. ये human, this is to get you from animal platform to human platform. And then spirituality can begin, you know. So most people feel, मैं 4 relative principles follow कर रहा हूँ, तो मैं बड़ा योगी हूँ. बोले योगी नहीं है, तो first stage पे है. That is the basic thing needed, you know. That is like really the beginning, do's and don'ts, you know. And then after that, the second stage is known as asana. Asana means exercises. This is a drunkard doing asana, and this is big as Iyengar doing asana. Looks same, but it's not exactly the same. पहला डूज के बाद है और दूसरा वाला डूज के बिना है. Third stage after the fourth stage. First do's and don'ts are first and second. The fourth stage is known as pranayam. Pranayam means breath control. Actually, pranayam is the stage from which mind control begins. Till the stage of pranayam, it's just on the physical level, bodily level, basically. Do's and don'ts for the body. That means what goes in, what doesn't go in. That's at the bodily level. And then, the asanas also at the bodily level. So, then after pranayam is a stage which is known as pratyahar. Pratyahar means essentially withdrawing the senses and taking them within. Essentially, what is pratyahar? The senses are like a wild horse. They're just running out to enjoy. Pratyahar is a stage where you accumulate the senses and bring them in. Focus on inward aspects of life. And that's where the stage of dharana comes in. Dharana means this is where meditation begins actually. Till now it is dealing with the body, mind and senses. Till the stage of pratyahar. And from the stage of dharana is a stage where you start focusing on the Paramatma within our own heart. And this is the beginning stage of meditation. After dharana comes a stage which is known as dhyana. So dhyana means intensified, concentrated meditation. This is the stage in which a yogi lives. A yogi lives in the inner world. And this is a stage known as dhyana. So the yogi is completely focusing on the Paramatma within the heart. And when that focus becomes complete and absolute, it is a stage which is known as samadhi. Complete absorption on the Paramatma within the heart. And here, at this stage, there is no distraction at all. So the first 6 stages, from 1 to 6, is known as Yoga Ruruksha stage. That is the beginning stage of yoga. And the 7 and 8, which is the concept of Dhyana and Samadhi, is a stage is known as Yoga Rudha stage, advanced stage of yoga. At our level, at our point, we are not able to deal with the mind only. What to speak of other things, So we are in a very, very initial stage of yoga. And therefore, we need to learn how to deal with our uncontrolled mind. Krishna says in the Gita that the uncontrolled mind is the worst enemy and the controlled mind is the best friend. Bandhuratma manastasya yenatmayavatmana jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartatmayeva shatruvat. So essentially he says, if you can somehow befriend the mind, then the mind can actually help you advance in your spiritual life. One time there were 2 rats, and these 2 rats somehow fell into a pot of yogurt. And these rats, naturally, it was too high for them to jump out, so they couldn't, and they were like literally sinking into the yogurt. Somehow they started swimming, trying to, come out, but nothing was happening after a long time. So many of their friends, they came and sat on top of the, vessel, looking at these two people drowning in the yogurt pot. And all the other rats on top, they started discouraging them. They said, forget it, don't try also, just give up. You die, no problem, So one rat, he was really discouraged, All my friends are telling me not possible only to come out. Might as well stop trying. So he stopped trying and he drowned and he died. The second rat started pedaling like mad, really intensely struggling, intensely, pedaling. And after many hours of pedaling intensely, those guys on top, they kept discouraging. They said, don't, forget it, look at him, he died so peacefully. You also give up, don't struggle so much, And somehow or the other, this fellow didn't give up, he just kept struggling. After many hours, that yogurt somehow, it got churned and a lump of butter got formed on it. And this rat jumped on the butter and jumped out. Those guys outside, they said, why didn't you give up? We discouraged you so much. He said, Acha, you discouraged me. I thought you all were telling me to come out. He was deaf. He couldn't hear properly. So he just felt that they are telling him to come out. So he got really inspired by their enthusiasm to help him. That's how the mind is. When the mind decides to give up, when the mind decides, I can't do it, when the mind decides that this is not meant for me, no matter how much external help is there, you can't do anything. That fellow can't achieve anything in life. And the mind is very strong and positive. Even with a little help or with no help, somehow the power of the mind, you can drive and do big things. Therefore, the mind is at three levels, functioning of the mind. First is the level of thinking, followed by the level of feeling, and followed by the level of willing. First you think that this man is envious of me. And then you start feeling angry towards that person. And then you decide, I will kill him. So thinking, feeling and willing. These are the stages at which the mind progresses. So we have no choice about how we feel and think most of the times. But we have choice about what kind of thoughts run in our mind. And therefore, as long as we can control our willing, that means our actions. So we may not be able to control our thoughts, that is feeling and thinking. Very difficult to control. But willing means acting based on those thoughts. Then we can at least somehow manage. So we need a lot of guidance on how to make this happen. So mind has to learn to see everything with an equal vision. That means when there are things of this world, valuable, invaluable, the mind should learn to see everything equally. There are many things that we like and many things that we don't like. Some vegetables we don't like, Some maybe a type of bed we don't like. So there are many things that we have our own likes and dislikes, So somehow the mind has to come to the stage where you can see everything with an equal vision. That is how a yogi thinks. That is how an advanced spiritualist thinks. And not only you see everything with an equal vision, you start seeing every situation of life with an equal vision, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant situations of life, whether it is a happy situation or a distressful situation. You just see it with an equal vision. And one step further is to see every person with an equal vision. You don't see a person as a friend or an enemy. You don't see a person as envious. You don't see a person as an animal or human. You just tend to look at every person with an equal vision. So that is how mind control, that is the highest level at which mind can be controlled. So unfortunately, for us to be able to reach that level, it requires a lot of direction and it requires a lot of guidance. So essentially, the concept of Dhyana Yoga that we are going to discuss over the next few weeks is something that is at a very, very subtle and a very, very deep level. And therefore, for us to be able to deal with our minds and for us to be able to deal with our consciousness, it needs us to understand this message of the 6th chapter. So the sixth chapter will be a little technical chapter in terms of the technical aspects of yoga, but I'll try to make it as interesting and as experiential as possible, and let us see how we really learn both the things about how the yoga of this Ashtanga yoga model is something that cannot function for us. It really doesn't work in our lives, but at the same time it'll help us understand how complicated the process of mind's thinking and functioning is. At some stage in the sixth chapter of the Gita, Arjun speaks about how he is unable to deal with his wild mind, and that's exactly the stage at which we are also. We are struggling with our mind and struggling with so many complications that our mind proposes, and therefore the sixth chapter is a very practical and a very deep chapter for us to be able to deal with mind control also. So we will go a little slowly, and specifically we will discuss about mind control quite a bit as we are dealing with the sixth chapter. Hare Krishna. Something very interesting about what is the most important quality, what is the most important element in practicing spiritual life. So, in this world, everybody goes through struggles. Especially when you're trying to practice spiritual life, we go through our own struggles. The mind gives its struggles, and we find so many reasons, excuses not to practice spiritual life, not to take it seriously. And we go through genuine problems in our life because of which we struggle also. Srila Prabhupada was asked once, when will struggle end? Struggle in the material world, whatever nature of struggle it is. Prabhupada said that when Mahavishnu inhales, that means all the universes enter into Mahavishnu, that time struggle stops. That happens once in a few million years, So till then struggle keeps on going on. So practically struggle is eternal. One time there was a man that was on his way to enter into the spiritual world, and just at the entry of the spiritual world he was stopped by one of the guards, and that guard told this person, to enter into the spiritual world you should have 100 points. Tell me what you did in your life to earn your points. Then I'll tell you how many points you've earned. You keep telling me what you have done in your life spiritually, and whatever you feel, you earn you points to enter into the spiritual world. This fellow started speaking about what all he did. He said, every week of my life, I've gone to temple and attended classes. That person said, 2 points. Come on, I attended for 50 years, every week I went for classes. He said 2 points, that's it. He was disappointed. It's 2 points for attending every week. Then he said, I chanted 16 rounds all my life. And this person said 3 points. Come on, 16 wala roj kiya, 3 point. Then he started thinking more, what else he did. He said, I distributed thousands of Bhagavad Gitas in my life. He said 3 points. इतना कुछ करने के बाद सिर्फ 8 पॉइंट हुआ अभी तक. And then he said, I gave so much donation to the temple whenever there was need. So he said 4 points. इतना कुछ करने के बाद सिर्फ अभी 12 पॉइंट हो गया. Then he said, I took full responsibility for my family. I did so much for them. He said 2 points. This man, he couldn't think of anything more, by which he could get more points. He was so frustrated. He said, at this rate, only God's grace can save me. He said, welcome to the spiritual world. The remaining 85 points is for you to recognize that only God's grace can save you. The moment you recognize that, you actually get the rest of the points. Actually, if you see, all that we're doing in spiritual life, whether it is chanting, whether it is coming to the temple, whether it is associating with devotees, eating prasad, whatever we're doing in spiritual life, it's not by the dint of that we will get qualified to go back to the spiritual world. It is not by the dint of that practice that we are really going to achieve perfection of our life. There is something beyond all that. If you look at the quality of everything we do, it's actually not even the quality to earn us those 1-2 points also. Consider the chanting process. When we chant, what are we exactly doing? Half the time the struggle is with sleep, and half the time the struggle is the mind. So we don't know whether we are chanting, we are sleeping, we are thinking, what are we doing? It's so much confusion exactly. Can you imagine someday we are chanting and Krishna comes and does a surprise check? What is the quality of our japa? He comes uninformed. God knows what state he will find us in. Every day different state, different problems, different situations we are struggling against. We before a couple of years back, we had a Gurukul here in our campus, like an orphanage. Many children would stay here. Now it's shifted to Vada. So when the children would stay here, they would all sit in the temple hall and chant japa with us in the morning. So one time something funny happened. It just brings the nature of how humans think. So there was one child, so the children had to sit in circle and chant, and there would be one devotee who would be like a monitor who would just see if they are, all they are present on time and chanting and all. There was one particular boy who was really enthusiastically chanting, He was shaking his body like anything, he was shaking his head, he was like really making intense expressions. So just looking at him, the devotee understood something is wrong with this fellow. Ati bhakti chorer lakshan. So he went to him and he said, he tapped his shoulder. He said, what are you doing? He said, japa kar raha hu. Then he told him to show his beads. He had a bead bag. Inside that there was no mala only. He was just shaking the bead bag just to show that he's chanting it. Completely fooling people like anything. So can you imagine what our status is? That our mind is exactly like this boy. Physically we may want to chant, but does our mind really want to focus on chanting? Does it really want to absorb itself in the holy name? In fact, the most brilliant ideas of the day come during japa time. I know there is one devotee who used to sit with a notepad and pen during japa, and he said the most amazing thoughts in my life all came in during japa only. There was a point of time where I also used to write down, because there's so many thoughts flooding into the mind, and just brilliant thoughts. All the problems that you face in the day, it gets solved during japa time. I know many people tell me, Prabhuji, japa acha hai, problem solve ho jata hai apna. So the question is, what is the standard of our chanting? Hardly anything that we can be proud of. Hardly anything that will really impress Krishna and make Krishna happy with us. Then we might say that, I may not be doing chanting nicely, but I do deity worship nicely. I do, I worship the deities, I do some seva of the deities nicely. But even that we have our own limitations of how we can serve the deities. Srila Prabhupada, when he installed Radha Krishna deities in Australia, so after installation of the deities, next day morning, Prabhupada is leaving Australia, going to another country. And just before leaving, he went in front of the deities and stood, and he offered a prayer to the deities. Now, at that point of time, in the early 70s, there was hardly any devotees in Australia. There was a handful of devotees. And even the oldest devotee at that point of time in that country was about 3-4 months old in the Hare Krishna movement. I mean, probably would be more senior than most of them at that time. So, but Prabhupada, he came in front of the deities and he prayed. He said, my dear Lord, I pray, please take care of yourself, because these people can't take care of you. He offered that as a prayer to the deities. One time, Prabhupada went to Auckland, and there was a ISKCON temple over there. So Prabhupada every day he would go for morning walks. That was his regular schedule. And after morning walk, you come and greet the deities, darshan of the deities. And during darshan arti, the altar opens, shank blows, Govinda Madhivashu prayers are there and all. So when the altar opened, Prabhupada saw Radha Krishna deities were there, very beautifully decorated, nice. He offered obeisances. When Prabhupada got up, he saw Gaur-Nitai deities are there. He got confused. He said, just now Radha Krishna was there, how did he become Gaur-Nitai? And the devotees told him, Prabhupada, we have a very innovative altar here, revolving altar. In front Radha Krishna, back Gaur-Nitai. After 5 minutes again Radha Krishna will come in front. Prabhupada said, what nonsense is this? Who told you to make like this altar? Somehow the human mind is not satisfied with stability. It wants change constantly, One time Prabhupada, this was in San Francisco, Prabhupada installed Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra deities. And the next day morning he went for a morning walk. And when he came back, the greetings deities opened. In the altar, Baldev and Subhadra were there, Jagannath was missing. Prabhupada said, where is Jagannath? Devotee said, Prabhupada, we took him for a morning walk. We thought everybody goes for morning walk, we should take him also. They just lifted him from the altar and took him for a morning walk. Prabhupada said, you can't take Jagannath like that for a walk like that. So if Jagannath has to go out of the temple, he has to go on a huge cart. And that's how the Rath Yatra procession started in ISKCON. Because of the stupidity of the devotees who didn't know how to handle deities, basically. So the understanding is our ability to do chanting, japa is very bad. We don't have the capacity and qualification to take care of deities or worship the Lord in any proper way. Standards are very bad. And what to speak of serving the devotees. So many times people feel that when we get a chance to do some seva, to do some service, that opportunity to serve is meant for purification. Service is never meant to display your talent, display your skill, and to become proud of it. Many times what happens is that when we get an opportunity to serve, rather than thinking that the service is an opportunity so that I purify myself, we start thinking that service is an opportunity to show how great I am, how good I am in certain skills, in certain abilities. Our mind works in that way somehow. There was one lady who one time cooked samosas for Srila Prabhupada. So she made samosas for his travel, So Prabhupada is leaving that very day in a few hours. And for the travel, she made many samosas. So when Prabhupada came to know that somebody is cooking samosas for him, he said, can I taste one? So they got him hot samosa. Prabhupada liked it very much. So he said, get me one more. So he kept eating and he ate 8 samosas at one stretch. So that lady who was inside, the Mataji was cooking, she became very happy. Naturally she became very proud. Prabhupada ate 8 samosas at one go. So she went to Prabhupada and she asked a very stupid question. So she was naturally very proud. She wanted the world to know also how Prabhupada likes my cooking. So she went and asked Prabhupada, who is your favorite cook in ISKCON? Very clearly worded question, Who is your favorite cook in ISKCON? So she thought Prabhupada will say, you. Just now you ate 8 samosas, right? Prabhupada said, me. I am my favorite cook. She got completely bewildered. Nobody expected Prabhupada to say that, The natural role of a spiritual master is to show the disciple that there should be some humility while you do seva, when you engage yourself in some service. The purpose of service is not to show your skill, but the purpose of service is to get purified. One of the names of Srimati Radharani her name is Vidyarthini. Radharani has thousands of names. One of the names is Vidyarthini. What is the meaning of Vidyarthini? Vidyarthini means she is an eternal student. Can you imagine? Radharani is somebody who is a perfectionist. It is explained that any item that she cooks it tastes like nectar. That is the benediction that she has. And she never repeats the same item ever again. So you can imagine, she's a perfectionist and she's such an expert. But still her name is Vidyarthini. The reason is because she's always looking for ability, opportunity, knowledge to upgrade her service to Krishna. So even of a person of that caliber, she's looking for opportunity and ability to upgrade her service. Not to speak of you and me. When can we ever assume that we are perfect in our ability to serve? Never. Our chanting is horrible. Our ability to worship deities is bad. Our ability to serve devotees is not in the right mood also. And then many people think that at least if not everything else, I am austere. My austerities will please Krishna like anything, In the Chaitanya Leela, Chaitanya Bhagavad Chaitanya Charitamrita talks about this very beautiful story of one person who was a very austere Brahmana. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he every day in Srivas Angan, there's a small house in Navadvip, where all the most confidential associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would come together and do kirtan, sing, dance together all night long. And Mahaprabhu was one time contemplating with his associates that all day we do whatever we can to serve the Lord, but all night why do we sleep? We should not waste time in sleeping, and all night also we should chant. Now for you and me to think like that, it's impossible. We think why is night time is less, night time should be more, daytime should be less, so we can sleep more. That's how our thoughts are. But Mahaprabhu, he introduced this nocturnal kirtans. All night long they would do kirtans. And in this nocturnal kirtans, not everybody was allowed. Very selective people whom Mahaprabhu personally invited only were allowed. One time, there's this Brahmana who came to Shivas Thakur and he requested Shivas Thakur that I want to one time in my life see the dancing of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I can do anything for that. Please somehow or the other allow me to see Mahaprabhu's dancing once. So Shivas Thakur, became very compassionate and he asked more details about this person. He said, I am a milk drinking brahmachari. Milk drinking brahmachari means I don't eat or drink anything else except milk. That's it. So Shivas Thakur became very impressed, really austere person, nothing else he eats and drinks except milk. So Shivas Thakur allowed him to come into the dancing arena and he hid him. So he hid him inside a big drum. And there was space so that he could see Mahaprabhu's dancing. So in the night when the dancing began, Mahaprabhu started dancing, intense kirtan. Suddenly, Mahaprabhu stopped dancing. And he stopped and asked Shivas Thakur, he said, I am not feeling the same ecstasy that I feel every day. He said, is there someone here who is not supposed to be here? Shivas Thakur told him, my dear Lord, there are no offenders over here. Mahaprabhu said, I didn't ask you that. I asked you, is there someone here who is not supposed to be here? Shivas Thakur said, my dear Lord, there are no sinful people here. He said, I am not asking you that. I am asking, is there someone here who is not supposed to be here? By this time, this fellow understood that he is not wanted and he is not welcome over here. So this fellow silently got up and he was leaving the room. But while he was leaving the room, he was actually so Shivas Thakur started, supporting this fellow. So he said, my dear Lord, he is not a non-devotee, he is not a disbeliever, he is a nice person. In fact, he is so austere that the only thing he drinks is milk. Mahaprabhu, when he heard this, he got very angry. He said, do you think the qualification of seeing my dancing is drinking milk? He said, just by drinking milk, you will not get perfection of your life. Drinking milk is not the qualification to go back to the spiritual world. Being austere is not the qualification to perfect your life. And then this milk drinking brahmachari, by the time he understood, he got up and he was walking away. And while walking away, in his heart, he was very grateful. Grateful that at least for a few seconds, he could see Mahaprabhu's dancing. And when he was going out with that gratitude, then Mahaprabhu called him back in. Seeing that the mood of this person is not that out of pride and austerity now, but it is out of gratitude. So, people especially in the land of India, God knows how many reasons are there to fast, So every second day you can fast, literally. I know people who almost every second, third day they are fasting only. They have no idea why they are fasting. Some reason or other comes up across the year to fast. One time, one of our brahmacharis, he had decided to not eat fried items for 2 years. 2 full years he didn't touch one fried item. After 2 years, when the day he decided to break the fast of fried item, he ate 32 batat vada. One day, one sitting. That is our standard of austerity, basically. Absolutely mentally unstable. We might think that our chanting is bad, our deity worship is bad, our serving the devotees is bad, austerity is pathetic. Then we might think at least we are using our knowledge, our intelligence is very, very high. And that thinking that, I have ability to understand, I have ability to comprehend knowledge, because of which Krishna should be happy with me. Unfortunately, our ability to understand Krishna, our ability to understand the scriptures is also limited. Because our capacity depends on how much talent Krishna has given us, how much intelligence Krishna has given us. Even if we have the complete intelligence, the best intelligence you can ever get, even Brahmaji's intelligence we have, still our ability to understand this world will be very limited. Because the way Krishna's creation functions, there are some things that you will never be able to understand. Therefore, in our philosophy, yesterday we were having this discussion about, the whole understanding of our philosophy is 3 words. Achintya Bheda Bhedu Tattva. So Achintya Bheda Bhedu Tattva means it's simultaneous oneness and difference. But that means we are qualitatively one with God, but quantitatively minute compared to God. But there is a very important word which is called as Achintya. Achintya means inconceivable. Even if you have the greatest intelligence in the world, there will be some things that will remain Achintya for you, no matter how intelligent you are. Srimad Bhagavatam, which has 12 cantos, is naturally access to the entire knowledge about Krishna. The 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam has knowledge about Krishna, the entire life of Krishna. But before we reach the 10th canto, there are 3 gates. And most people don't cross these 3 gates. These gates are made purposely like that. The 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. These are like gates. And if you read these 3 cantos, the information and the knowledge that is there purely comes under the category of inconceivable. That means using your tiny brains, how much ever milligram, how much ever kilograms it is, you will never be able to figure it out. I will explain to you one such description, and then you tell me how you will understand it with our limited intelligence and abilities. Why are these gates created? So that not everybody reaches the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Not everybody gets access to Krishna Leela directly. Why? Because Shukadeva Goswami, the great acharyas, they want only the most faithful and pure-hearted people to reach the Krishna Leela. Otherwise they will get bewildered. They will get completely confused, especially if they reach the Rasa Leela. And therefore, these 3 gates are created purposely to get people stuck. And these gates are very small. You can't run through them. You have to crawl through them, literally. Just one explanation which will give you an understanding. There is a place that is described in the Bhagavatam which is known as Jambudvip. Jambudvip is considered to be a huge place. And there are some descriptions about Jambudvip that are mind-blowing. It is explained in Jambudvip there are trees that are so tall, thousands and thousands of feet. Sometimes some of the trees are kilometers tall. And these trees have fruits which are the size of elephants. One fruit size of an elephant. And there are trees that have mango fruit hanging on them. Can you imagine mango size of an elephant? And the two, not just mango. It is a mango without skin and without seed. Can you imagine? Elephant की size का एक mango. ऐसा बहुत mango है वो पेड़ में. Hundreds of mangoes on that tree. And it is explained that sometimes the mangoes fall. And when the mango falls, it splashes. It creates a river of mango juice. And the residents of Jambudweep, they swim in that river, mango juice. And it is explained when the sun shines brilliantly on the river of mango juice, the combination of sun's rays and the mango juice, it has some chemical combination and gold is produced. So people in that area, in Jambudweep, just pick up gold from the river bed and they make ornaments and wear them. Now tell me, what do you call this other than achintya? What do you call this other than inconceivable? How can you even comprehend it with our limited intelligence and abilities, right? Now, for most people who hear this, they will say, mythology hai. This mythology. I can't understand. Fantasy hai, fairy tale hai. ठीक है, आपके लिए होगा. But भागवतों में तो लिखा है. Now, we can't say that, ऐसे ही लिख दिया, थोड़ा ऐसे ही घुमाने का. What if it is the truth? And anything in the written in the Bhagavatam is the truth. Just because we can't understand it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Therefore, Newton, when he was naming one of his theories, mathematical equation theories, he named it as calculus. Because that day he went to the beach and he saw when he was standing in the ocean shore, waves were coming and hitting. There were hundreds of pebbles being pushed in. Just looking at the number of pebbles, the number of shells, the amount of grains of sand on the ground, Newton, he understood that the entire universe, the creation of the Lord is unlimited. And my understanding is so limited. And therefore, I am humbled by it. So calculus means somebody who is humbled by God's creation. And therefore, no matter how much intelligence we have, no matter how sharp our brain is, there are some things that will remain inconceivable for us. Our abilities are always going to be limited. So, our chanting, our ability to serve the deities, our ability to serve the devotees, our austerities, our knowledge, our intelligence level, everything is bare minimal, And considering all that, if you still calculate, you will come to calculation of about 15-16 points. I'm not even talking about the quality of those 15-16 points. But I was saying, if you calculate all that, it comes to about 15-16 points. What about the rest? 85 points, kidhar se milega humko? That's why bhakti is called the path of grace, where in all other forms of knowledge, all other forms of religion, devotion, processes, a lot depends on how much energy and effort you put in, how much skill, ability, intelligence you have. But in the path of bhakti, what you put in is for some extent. But what Krishna has to add on to what you put in is a great extent. Therefore, in bhakti, what is more important than your effort is Krishna's grace. And therefore, it is known as the path of grace. Krishna has two names. In the Vishnu Sahasranam, there are multiple names of the Lord that are mentioned. One of the names of the Lord is Nimisha. Nimisha means the one who blinks his eyes. Another name of the Lord is Animisha. That means the one who never blinks his eyes. Now, how can the same person blink his eye also and not blink his eye also? That is how Krishna is. All controversies, all contradictions come to rest in the Lord. Because the way that these two names are given purposely to the Lord. When does the Lord blink his eyes? When a devotee makes a mistake, that time the Lord blinks his eyes, so that he doesn't see the mistake of the devotee. And when does the Lord not blink his eyes? When a devotee is doing some service. He keeps his eyes widely open so that he sees every small minute thing that the devotee is doing for him. And therefore, the Lord has two names. One is Ranganath. Ranganath means that is a form of the Lord who blinks his eyes. Ranganath is in a constantly sleeping form. So he sleeps on a snake bed. And the beauty of the snake bed is that I'm sure all of you all would have, those who work in hospitals, understand this. If somebody sleeps on a bed for a long period of time, you get bed sores. Your back starts having boils and all that. But Ranganath is sleeping on a bed for all his life, literally. So naturally he'll get bed sores. But he never gets bed sores. The reason is because the type of mattress he uses is perfect. What is his mattress? Not Teflon, not whatever duplex or whatever are types. He uses Ananta Ch6, the snake bed, as his mattress. And good mattresses are those that have air circulation. So Ananta Ch6 is the best mattress, because when snake breathes, it kind of goes up and down. So Ranganath gets a lot of cushioning effect in between. And more than that, there is another purpose why Ranganath uses a snake bed. The second purpose is that when Ranganath is sleeping, the snake is always above his head. And when small children sleep, I don't know whether you have ever done this. Mothers generally, to make a child sleep, they blow air into the eyes of the child. When they blow air into the eyes of the child, the eyes flutter and the child gets sleep faster. That's what Ananta Ch6 does all day long. He blows air into the eyes of the Lord, and the Lord, he feels very nice, and he sleeps. Can you imagine what a fantastic bed this is? It not only gives you nice comfort below, but also air from top. That's why his name is Ranganath, and that is the form of the Lord who is Nimisha. Whenever devotee makes mistakes, he flutters his eyes. He closes his eyes. That 1 second he doesn't see the mistake. And the other form of the Lord is known as Jagannath. If you look at Jagannath's eyes, they are huge, big, always open. And that's the form of the Lord who is actively watching what devotees do to serve him. So there are two types of perfections. One is known as Kripa Siddhi, and the other is known as Sadhana Siddhi. So Kripa Siddhi essentially means these are exceptional cases who perfect their life only by grace. Kripa Siddhi, these are people who are a byproduct of grace. Like I was giving yesterday 2 examples. One time there was a temple, there's a story in one of the Puranas where one rat entered into a Vishnu temple. And this rat, he was eating the wicks of the lamp that is offered to the Lord. And somehow while he was eating the wicks, the ghee that was put in the wick, the rat's mustache caught fire. And the whole rat started burning. And the rat started dancing, And naturally it died in front of the Lord Vishnu. But Vishnu assumed that he was offering his whole body as a lamp, to him. And he actually considered that service and gave him perfection of his life. He went back to the spiritual world, that rat. By trying to eat the wick of Vishnu, and he burnt himself and he went back to the spiritual world. This is known as Kripa Siddhi. There was another ant which was drinking Charanamrit, licking drops of Charanamrit which was in one vessel. And somehow it slipped and fell into the vessel of Charanamrit. It drowned and died. Went back to the spiritual world. Now if you look at stories like this, you hear stories like this, you might wonder, come on. Now, I am drinking liters and liters of Charanamrit. I know some people who love to just drink Charanamrit. They take bottles, big bottle of Charanamrit. Full bottle they'll drink. Nothing happens. All their bad habits don't go away. They are struggling next day morning, chanting, struggling only again. So no sign of going back to the spiritual world. So we might wonder what's happening over here. This ant, by drowning in Charanamrit, he went back to the spiritual world. These are what is known as Kripa Siddhi, exceptional cases. Don't expect that to happen with you. What is going to happen with us is known as Sadhana Siddhi. Sadhana Siddhi means that through the process of sadhana, by intensely practicing the process of sadhana, we come to a stage where we attract the Lord's Kripa. In both cases, Kripa is needed only. It's not just by your effort you will go back to the spiritual world. In the case of Sadhana Bhakti Siddhi also, you need kripa, but kripa comes after you do sadhana properly. Once you do sadhana properly and you impress the Lord, you really show the Lord that you are sincere, then the Lord will give you grace and then you will go back, you will perfect your life. This is the general case. One time, there was one of our devotees, he had gone to apply for an American visa. And this devotee saw this happening right in front of his eyes. And this was his realization. Very interesting story, you know. So there were many people waiting for the visa, for applying for the visa. So there was a line. So there was one lady who was like 4th or 5th in the line. And she had a small child with her. And this child was crying like mad. Mad means mad, you know. Somehow small children have a amplifier fitted in their voice, you know. And always full blast. You know. Full blast amplification. This baby was crying like crazy, you know. And the whole, you know, embassy, people, nobody could focus. The child was crying and the mother didn't know what to do. She was trying her best, but the baby is just not. And she had all her visa documents with her and all that. And interestingly, she had 4 documents missing. And her file was very shabby. She's holding a baby in one hand, the file in the other hand. Somehow she's struggling, you know, to. The officer, he or she, I don't know who, he got totally irritated. He called her first. He said, come first. So she skipped the whole line. She went right to the front. And when she reached in front of him, the file fell. All papers fell. Honeymoon day. So naturally, somehow she gathered everything with the baby in her hand, and the baby was crying still, you know. And she somehow kept the file. This man, he didn't see what was in the file. He just stamped the visa and he said, Niklo, jao bahar, you know. Visa granted. And then the remaining people that were there in the line, they were completely bewildered, you know. What's going on over here? And there was another person standing in the same line. And he had perfect file. All documents in place, in order, systematically filed. He gave the file, visa rejected, get lost. You can't argue over there. You know. The more you try to fight, the more the probabilities of you never getting a visa in future is there. You know. So this guy knew he can't fight anymore. He just walked away. So this devotee who had this whole experience, he was sharing his realization. This is what spiritual life is. We are all looking for visa to go back to the spiritual world. And all our sadhana is like documents, collecting documents, you know. 16 माला जपा किया जीवन भर, 4 नियमों का पालन किया जीवन भर, you know, सेवा भी किया, बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन भी किया, इतने सारे होली धाम गए, धाम का टिकट भी एनक्लोज करो, है ना, यात्रा की, ये किया, वो किया, how many ekadasis I fasted, all that is like documents, you know. Just by having all the documents in place, don't think visa will be granted. Many people assume document बराबर है तो visa मिलना चाहिए. ऐसा नहीं होता है practical में, है कि नहीं? So therefore we say that all our sadhana is like documents. ISKCON is like the consulate general, you know. आ जाओ, apply करो, you know. And Srila Prabhupada is like the brand ambassador, you know, spiritual world. He came with a message. Go back to Godhead, you know. Back to Godhead magazine chalo kiya, you know. He started a whole embassy. And this ISKCON embassy is available all over the world, you know. Every country there is an embassy. Every country there is an ISKCON temple where you can go and apply. So essentially, we may have all the documents in place. We may come to the right place also to apply for visa. But still there is no guarantee you will get visa. Essentially, our documents don't bring us visa. It only shows our sincerity. And therefore, when we show that sincerity through our sadhana, what we are actually looking for is to please Krishna and please Srila Prabhupada. If somehow through our sincerity we manage to please the Lord and please the pure devotees of the Lord, then somehow there will be a point of time when Krishna will say, Chalo, we'll grant this fellow visa. In fact, Those who externally are perfect in sadhana, perfect in their japa, perfect in all their rituals, all the documents, it's not necessary you will get kripa. Just like this mother, she had a baby who was crying madly, and because that baby was crying very madly, somehow or other they decided to be, graceful to her. So we may be very shabby in our, sadhana. We may be very shabby in our ability to chant. We may be very shabby in our, ability to serve the devotees, serve the deities, in whatever our ability to follow some austerity, to be able to understand spiritual knowledge. But no matter how much inabilities we have or shortcomings we have, but ultimately, if somehow or the other we manage to please Krishna and please the devotees, that's it. How do we please Krishna and how do we please the devotees? It's not so much by our abilities, but it is by our attitude. So what Krishna is looking for is the right attitude. And if you come with the right attitude, and even if you come with no abilities, still you will get the certification and you will go back to the spiritual world. Therefore, the story of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a very important story for us to understand and meditate on. The story of Lord Chaitanya visiting Srirangam. So once when Mahaprabhu was in South India, he went to one particular temple where he saw something very strange. He saw that there was one old man, elderly Brahmana, who was trying to read the Bhagavad Gita. And while he was reading the Bhagavad Gita, he had tears in his eyes constantly. So Lord Chaitanya was very intrigued. Why is he crying? And then he saw the scene over there. He saw that there were many people standing around him, very scholarly Brahmanas, very scholarly people, and all of them were making fun of this fellow. They were just cracking jokes, they were pulling his leg, they were making fun of him. So, so Mahaprabhu was very confused. He said, why are they making fun of him? Why is he crying? And while trying to read the Bhagavad Gita. So he thought maybe he's crying because everybody is making fun of him. So Mahaprabhu went and asked this Brahmana, what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to read the Bhagavad Gita. He said, my spiritual master has told me that every day I have to read the entire Bhagavad Gita. So every day I have been trying sincerely to read the entire Bhagavad Gita, but the problem is that I don't know how to read and write. So Mahaprabhu said, then how are you reading? He said, I'm trying my best. And as I'm reading with my broken language and broken abilities, all these people are making fun of me. So Mahaprabhu said, then why are you crying? He said, my dear Lord, the reason I'm crying is because every page of the Bhagavad Gita that I turn, every little word that I read of the Bhagavad Gita, I can only see one picture, one image coming out from the book. The image that I can see is Krishna is riding the chariot of Arjuna. And he says, when I see this image of Krishna driving the chariot of Arjuna, I get tears in my eyes. Because I see that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he's become a menial servant for his devotee. When I think about that, I can't handle but cry. Mahaprabhu, when he saw this, when he heard this, he said, my God, this person has understood the essence of what Bhagavad Gita is. He may not know the meaning of the words of the Bhagavad Gita, but he's understood the essence of what Bhagavad Gita is actually about. And Mahaprabhu said, you are the most fortunate person in the entire universe because you understood this essence. And then Mahaprabhu actually embraced him and glorified the South Indian Brahmin like anything. Two things. One is seeing the effort that he is putting in because his Guru has told him. Though he had no ability, no capacity to read the Bhagavad Gita, but because Guru has told him, he is doing it sincerely. And no matter how much fun people are making of him, he is putting his efforts. And what really pleased the Lord is, he is not just putting the effort, but he is putting it with the right attitude. Understanding that what is the most important thing is looking at Krishna's grace on his devotees, Krishna's compassion on his devotees. When Mahaprabhu saw that in this person, he said, this person knows the essence of bhakti. And he decided to really show great compassion on the South Indian Brahmin. And therefore, for all of us who are trying to practice our spiritual lives, we are at some point in our life we will be at the entrance to the spiritual world, hopefully. And in the gate of the spiritual world we will be asked this question, 100 points kidhar hai? So that is now the time you go and start opening your documents and start showing all your ye sadhana kya, wo sadhana kya. That is the time when you need to show your helplessness. That is the time when you need to show that I am completely useless. I don't have, if you see from capacity and ability point of view, I am not supposed to be there at all. But somehow or the other, when we study the books of Srila Prabhupada, when we understand what really essence of spiritual life is, we understand that more important than all those documents is our attitude. And so what we try to work in our spiritual lives, along with doing our sadhana properly, it's not that those documents are not important. Those documents are extremely important. Because without those documents, you would not even be entertained. You would not even be considered, But those documents are not the only things. Along with those documents, we need to work on our attitude also. We need to work on our mood as a devotee, our demeanor as a devotee. Because ultimately what will get us in is not our documents, not our abilities, but grace. And the grace of the Lord and the grace of the devotees comes in only when the devotees see our attitude, the Lord sees our attitude and our sincerity. And that is what gives the remaining 85 points that is missing. And that those 85 points is enough to fulfill all our shortcomings, and then we get into the spiritual world. Hare Krishna.